Okay, this next part, we're going to talk about Chance's electric guitar and how it's different from the acoustic guitar. First of all, Chance isn't going to strum quite as often as Joel did. Joel was strumming more than one note at a time, all together. Now he could have also been doing what's called picking, and that's where you pick one note at a time, and it's easier to do with a little piece called a pick. Here's what it looks like. There's lots of different designs, but it's shaped like that usually, kind of like a heart, but without the little bump on the heart. Like there's no one of that part. Okay, so it's just made up, yeah?
If you don't have any picks, but you do have like a guitar, but you can't find your pick, if your mom and dad have like a credit card that they don't really use anymore, then you can scissor that credit card in half, and it works as a somewhat large pick.
Oh, well, there you go. Always workarounds, right? Thank you. Okay, so now he also has a strap, and he also has a head. Oh, but look at the difference here. Let's look at this. Come forward a little bit. It's not on yet, so we won't reverb. Okay, so right here, this part here, the head, look at the difference between that head and this head. This one has 6 strings and 6 pins, right? Well, this one also has 6 strings, but it puts all the pins on one side. I'm not exactly sure why, but it's just a design element that's pretty true of most acoustic and electric guitars. You see that a lot. So it's a choice, right? Thank you. Okay. Now, his body here is a lot smaller, right? Now, his guitar that he has here is actually a 3/4 scale guitar. So this isn't as long as a standard guitar because he's had this one since he was 6. So he has a smaller version so that it's easier for his arm length to play. It's also easier for his finger length to play because you have to be able to reach from underneath to hit the notes. You don't go across the top, you go from underneath, okay? So when you're going from underneath, you need a nice good reach, especially with that pinky, right? Yeah. Okay. So what he has here is the same thing. He has frets, and he has the strings, and he's got the pins, but he doesn't have the same kind of a body. And although he does have something of a pick guard, it's not exactly the same because it doesn't need to be protected because this right here is some sort of a fiberglass, resin, plastic. Some are made out of metal. So there's all different kinds of materials that go into electric guitars because this part's completely irrelevant.
This is plastic.
The way guitars make their sound is through electricity. So what it does is it moves the sound. I was going to say electronics. So it goes from, there's a cord right here that plugs into the bottom. Lift up. Lifts it, plugs into the bottom of the guitar. Okay? And the cord goes over to an amplifier. Now, if you're a professional guitar player, you probably have one these days that's cordless, which is great. But in this case, we have a cord, so you do have to worry about that if you're doing some dance moves while you're rocking out. You got to be careful that you have a cord. Okay? Now, the amplifier, there's all sorts of different ones out there, different sizes, different power with different kinds of things on them that you can do. The thing about an amplifier is try playing a string right now for us with it off. It doesn't sound anything like this. Let me see, if I got this and I play that E.
The bottom 2 notes.
So if I do this.
Yours sounds terrible, doesn't it? Mine has this nice, rich sound, and yours is like, boom, right?
Yeah.
So now, go ahead and turn it on for us.
This is gonna sound weird.
Okay, so go ahead and play those same 2 notes that we were playing. Oh, that's much better. Turn it off again. Play those 2 notes again. Massive difference. Turn it on again. There's of course volume on that. You can turn it up or down. And for him, he has earphones so he can practice his guitar in the house without it being this loud. Right. so we won't hear it as loud. So then he also has different settings on there. Now the thing about electric guitar is that it was created for rock and roll bands. And the reason it was created was so it would sound different from an acoustic guitar. It's different in its style. And the style is supposed to sound harder, a little more ugly, a little more cool than an acoustic guitar. Rough, right? So let's rough this up a little bit. So he has some buttons here. What's this one called?
This one's clean, so
Clean.
This is supposed to sound like that acoustic guitar.
Close
and then
enough.
if I turn it to crunch, it sounds like this.
Pretty good. Next one.
And then if I go to metal,
Back up a little bit.
I need to back up a tiny bit.
Something happens called feedback. If you are too close to an amplifier with your electric guitar or your electric instrument, even a microphone, if you're singing and you're too close to an amplifier, you get this thing called feedback, and it's this high-pitched sound that nobody needs to hear. So I'm not even going to show you an example. Just don't, you want to stay away from your amplifier. Okay, go ahead. Oh my gosh. Okay, now try the next one.
That's insane. I should back up all the way.
You're good, you're good. We tried this already, you're good. Okay, cool, so stay there. So what that's called, what's happening is called reverberation. Now we already talked about that word, reverb. Actually, I'm sorry, I just got corrected. There is reverberation, I can hear it, but the way that it makes it change is called distortion. So the distortion, the more distorted, and distortion means that something is odd or changed in a way that makes it more unusual. Distortion usually isn't a word that we associate with something positive and bright and happy. It's more like something that makes it even meaner, harder, harsher. Okay, so that's the whole point with electric guitars, to create these meaty kind of sounds. Okay, so is there anything else you want to tell me about the things that are on there?
Oh, so
These right here.
yeah, this I honestly don't know what that does because I've never really tried it before.
Okay,
I don't really want to because it
Try
could
it.
explode.
try it.
That changed something. I don't hear.
It's a wow, 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 wow.
Oh.
It's an echo.
No, that's an echo. This would be
Well, it sounded like an echo to me.
It sounded like an echo.
Okay, so that's good enough. So what are these here for? This one says volume.
This one says
tone, and that one says tone. What does that mean?
okay. There is a bass tone and there is a treble tone. So treble.
So bass and treble.
So a bass tone would be like these three pretty much because these are lower strings, thicker, stuff like that. These would be treble strings.
Ah, that's true too.
Thinner.
We didn't mention the strings themselves all have a different roundness to them. The thicker the string, the lower the note. The smaller the string, the higher the note. Right? Okay, so I'm sorry. Go ahead. So the tone ones just kind of mess with that a little bit.
So the tone ones kind of mess with the power of each. And
Okay.
you usually
And then
like
what's
to
this
do
for?
that as a default. And then if I
Whoa, that's cool.
this is something I call a crank. And
We call it a crank.
And the reason
I don't know what it's really called, but he calls it a crank.
turns around.
Oh, okay, cool. All right. So why don't you go ahead and play for us? So I want you to pick a real commonly known bass line for us.
Bass line.
Okay, that's okay. So go ahead.
Bass line.
Uh-huh.
Sure, this one.
Are you too close to the amp?
No, this is crunch.
Okay, got it. Got it.
So that's
How about the one dun dun dun? dun,
yeah,
dun,
this
dun.
is this one.
Good. So you notice what he did there was he picked certain certain strings and he pressed certain frets. Can you play that same one again? I want you to come a little closer. Let me get you up here. Okay, there, good. Back up, one step. Back, one more step.
Back up one step.
There you go, good. Okay, so now can you play the same exact thing again for me? Good. Now say thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you and good night. Wow.